obviously Slattery. He's suing Nashville Mayor John Cooper and Michael Caldwell, who's the chief medical director. And the lawsuit states essentially that while the state and local governments are unquestionably afforded the right, that's the language, unquestionably afforded the right to address public health and safety issues related to COVID-19, they are not allowed to violate, quote, inalienable natural rights of the people under the state and national constitutions. I don't think there's any question there. Fundamentally speaking, the lawsuit goes on to allege more directly that Facebook killed it. Gabi? Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh, well, that's sad.
Hold on one second.
Shine,
hold on one
no
second.
worry.
We're back on. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll continue in here. Lawsuits states that while the state and local governments are unquestionably afforded the right to address public health, you can't violate inalienable natural rights to people. Okay, fine, but that's speaking a bunch of overarching terms that don't really make sense to a lot of people. The lawsuit specifies that the defendants plan to close, the defendant meaning the state and city governments at this point, the defendants plans to close all non-essential businesses across the state violated citizens' constitutional and fundamental rights, such as the right to travel, freedom of association, freedom of religion, right to be free from illegal seizure, property rights, economic rights, and other civil liberties. The actions of the government, according to the lawsuit, reportedly led to unemployment as well as losses in net sales and production. Now, again, on its face, I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that. On its face, I mean, you could make a decent argument, I suppose. I'll put it this way. You could absolutely make an argument that the actions of the state government and the actions of the city government clearly led to those outcomes. A restriction of the right to travel, a restriction of freedom of association, a restriction of freedom of religion, a restriction of the right to be free from illegal seizure, property rights, economic rights. Absolutely, you can. The state and local governments force people to be inside their homes, sort of, or they at least force businesses to no longer do business, which comes to the outcome of all the stuff that he's talking about here. The inevitable question, follow-up is, yeah, but don't they kind of have the right to do that during a pandemic? I'm not making that argument. That's not the argument that I'm making. That's not the policy that I would like to push. I'm just saying the current state of affairs that we are in right now, under executive orders and under state of emergencies, isn't that kind of what everyone is expecting? And I'll tell you right now, I would definitely expect this suit to fail. I would absolutely expect this suit to fail. And if you don't agree with me, then I think we need to step back and take a question as to, then how do we change that then? If you don't like that is happening, if you don't like that this suit is inevitably bound to fail, as I presume it would be, then we need to take a step back and say, how much control do you really want state and local governments, or national government for that matter, to have when it comes to a pandemic? Because this guy is exactly right. But for the actions of the state government, this guy would not have lost his right to freedom of religion and freedom of association. This is the same conversations everyone's been having over the last couple of weeks, Mr. Henry. No big surprise. The big surprise is that this guy is trying to do something about it. And the other slightly big surprise here, if you just joined again, we're talking about a lawsuit that's going on in Nashville, a local business owner suing the state and the city government, saying, hey, your actions caused my business to fail. You owe me something. Essentially being deprived of property without due process is another argument he's making. Here's the interesting thing, though. Here's where the suit takes a kind of divergence that doesn't really follow with the rest of the theme. The theme so far has been sort of this limited government stance that you can't use the power of government, even during a pandemic, to reach into my personal business, to reach into my life, to restrict these inalienable, God-given, substantive rights that I have, that you didn't give to me. That's been the theme so far. But what follows after that is something that I find very, very odd. The suit goes on to state that the defendants, again, meaning the defendants being the state and the city government, the defendants failed to protect under law, including mandatory reporting by citizens who suspect that they may have been infected, mandatory quarantining of those who have been infected, quarantining the susceptible segments of population, monitoring those who have been quarantined, and pursuing contact tracing and testing to anyone that may spread the virus. Now, here's where I get off the rails a little bit here, Sean. It's like, well, what are you asking? You're in the one hand saying, government, don't infringe upon my right to freely practice the businesses I need. And on the other hand, saying, but also government, make sure to protect my ability to operate as a business. I don't think you can have it both ways. And maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe I'm missing just the simple aspect of like, well, yeah, Mr. Henry, but the one thing government should be there to do is protect the welfare of the people. But dude, like, hold on. On the one hand, you're saying that the government's actions restricted your right to travel, freedom of association, freedom of religion, right to be free from illegal seizure, property rights and economic rights. And on the other hand, you're saying, but the government didn't force citizens to report their neighbors. The government didn't force people that were infected to stay in a mandatory quarantine period. The government didn't force susceptible segments of the population to stay quarantined. The government didn't force monitoring of those that are quarantined. The government did not force contact tracing. All of these things, if they were to have happened, the business owners making the claim, if these things were to have happened, the reporting, then healthy segments of society could come and participate in my business. But do you see why I'm so conflicted and why some of this stuff is happening and why I'm bringing this up yet one more time today? I don't know if I'm asking for just ideological consistency. Maybe that's all I'm asking for. Maybe I'm just confused because this guy is basically saying, like, on the one hand, I don't want government to be involved in all, but on the other hand, I need government to be involved. And maybe I'm missing some part of this here, but I don't know. Real News audience, help me out here, man, because I just can't make sense of this. I can't make heads or tails of this. I don't know where he's coming from. Fundamentally speaking, what this really gets down to me, it just seems like a selfish suit. It just seems like a purely selfish endeavor by this one person. And I don't mean to put it this way. I really am sorry. I really am sorry because this guy is basically saying that this shutdown exceeded losses of $200,000, he's saying. Now, he still was able to pay his employees. He went on to say that since 2017, he's had a record revenue year, up from 56% from the previous year in just the first couple of months of this year. 56% business he was up by. Thanks, Trump, for the improved economy, I guess, right? But then during the shutdown, he's lost over $200,000. So he's seeking multiple declaratory judgments against local and state governments, injunctive relief, including a permanent injunction prohibiting the state and local governments from depriving all of those rights we mentioned before. Temporary restraining orders against prohibiting state and local governments from enforcing any prohibition of live music, the right to file more temporary restraining orders, or anything like this. He's also asking for, compensation, legal fees, discretionary costs, all this other same stuff. And importantly, he's not saying, I don't want to get away from protective measures either. Like social distancing is fine, wearing masks and gloves is fine, protective gear, all that stuff is totally fine. I got no problem with that. But again, I go back to one more time before we switch to some of these national stories, and we just talked about protective gear. I have a very interesting video of how other businesses are innovating with their versions of protective gear. Before we switch to that, though, I want to know for the Real News audience, give it some time to breathe here. What do you think, man? Where are you standing on this? How do you feel? Where are you at right now? Am I missing something? Is this guy being consistent and I just don't understand how he's being consistent or inconsistent? You get what I'm saying? Let me know in the Real News audience section right now if I'm missing something where he's saying like, hey, government, you deprive me of all my due process rights. You deprive me of all my constitutional rights. But at the same time, I kind of want you to deprive other people of those as well so my business can still maintain and operate. I just don't think you can have it both ways.
From the comments, Daniel says, it's a legal argument. Lawyers play every angle. It's not about philosophical consistency. Kel from the chat room says, it has not now or ever been the government's responsibility to protect anyone's health. And that's all the comments we have on that so far. I think something similar to Daniel. It's like, this is just the first lawsuit. There's going to be thousands. And it sounds like they just went for everything, just that spray it all against the wall and see what sticks, that kind of deal. But yeah, it's not consistency. It's like, I've been harmed and I'm going to charge you for all the things and to recoup that harm. I don't think there's any consistency. It doesn't have to be a part of it necessarily for a lawsuit. I mean, it doesn't have to be. But I think he's just trying to recoup some value, don't you? And he's trying to make sure that this value that isn't taken from anyone ever again. Kind of what I said earlier this week is that we need to make sure this cannot happen again.
That's a great point, man. I don't think this guy is so disillusioned to think that he has any chance of actually winning this suit, right? I think his attorney probably told him that as soon as he took this on, thinking that, hey, it's not necessarily a frivolous suit. I'll take it on for you, but don't think that you're actually going to get any money out of this. And I'm sure the business owner thought like, yeah, that's no problem. Shoot, his attorney may be doing a pro bono just to get more exposure for his name and his firm. I don't know. I don't know how that stuff works. But I would tell you right now, like if his attorney says don't expect to win anything out of this, he might say, just like you said, Shine, that's fine. I'm just setting the standard for when this. Look, they're saying it's going to come back again in the fall, right? That's what the experts are saying. And if that's what's going to happen, I want to make sure once we do this again, if we start reopening again here towards the middle or towards the end of summer, if we get stuff rolling and chugging along again, I want to make sure that, I've drawn my line in the sand, that I've said something, that we make sure to be able to get this right. And China, by the way, if you could grab that next clip here, it's right under the national stories as we go to some national stories here, that you'll see that some other examples of how businesses are what they're willing to try to enforce these social distancing guidelines. We got a video here. I believe it's coming out of Germany here in just a second as Sean's pulling up. It starts at second 20 seconds there, clip 27. This guy said in this suit previously, he doesn't mind the orders that are being given out to social distancing, wearing masks and gloves, protective gear, sanitary guidelines, other methods that are meant to be, preventing the spread. And China, for whenever we're ready to go on that, let me know, because there's some businesses that are trying.
We're ready to go.
Yeah, play that first part real quick if you can, man. You'll see some pool noodles here coming up in just a second.
This is in Germany, actually, a cafe that requires diners to wear pool noodles on their head for social distancing. So you take a look at the picture. That's what I mean. You've got grown adults sitting at a cafe with pool noodles hanging off their head, and the idea is it's that's going to give you the.
You want me to keep going with that?
That's fine, man. As long as you see the pictures.
Yeah, the video. We saw the video. Yeah.
And go ahead and fast forward. I mean, while you're on there, we'll get this next clip pulled up. And fast forward to about 1 minute and 9 seconds here, man. And just let me know what you think. I mean, like this in Germany, that's a little bit ridiculous. It is. But I think the fact of the matter right now is, man, that people are willing to go through a little bit, if not a lot, of ridiculousness to get back to some sense of normalcy. Like, in all sincerity. And some part of me, some very small part of me, wants to say, like, kudos to this cafe for, I don't know, man, trying to make some fun out of it, or trying to do something with social distancing. I know, like Mr. Henry, giving way too much credit.
You can't see it right now, Graham, but I'm just showing the people with the sound off and looping it, but I'm showing them the inner tube people walking around right now.
You don't even have to do the sound on that one. The inner tube people is just as good. That's
incredible. That's incredible.
Right.
Incredible. Hey, talk about the president being right about pent-up demand, right? If people are willing to jump through these proverbial hoops, or literal ones, I mean, to spend some money, there must be some pent-up demand.
Dude, exactly. And yeah, as you're seeing on the screen, these guys that are walking around in these bumper pool style or bumper car style, like, there's this like massive rafts you go down a lazy river or something like that. I mean, look, this is a little bit ridiculous. It's not, it's a lot. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd on its face. In any other situation, actually, dude, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Because as I'm saying this right now, if I was 21, 22 again, and I went into some bar and they put like a bumper car thing style around me with that I could move around in, I mean, don't expect that to last throughout the entire night, because guaranteed I'm playing drunk bumper cars with my buddy beside me. It'd be a fun time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but those pool noodles on your head, though, I mean, that's weird. Yeah. Hey, I can just give you some anecdotal stuff. I went to a restaurant last night. Actually got my first takeout beer. That was weird. Like I carried out a cup of beer with so weird. But anyway, there were only like 7 people in the dining room because everybody had to have so much space and no one allowed at the bar. It was so sad. It was actually sad. When I walked in there, I was like, I'd rather be outside or have picked up my food because this is sad. Even without the pool noodles, it felt weird in the restaurant where I was. It felt awkward. Everything about it was awkward. I think it was awkward for the server too. And I just don't see. I was like, I asked her, I said, why are we even doing this? Why can't I just go sit at the bar? She's like, the rules and stuff. I'm like, well, man, there's nobody in the hospital right now. Only 5 people have died. Let's get this party started in here,
And honestly, man, I think it is a little bit about perspective, right? Or if not a lot of it about perspective. I mean, Eric just said on Facebook like a second ago, I remember seeing a meme with an older gentleman wearing a hat like this at Lowe's. This was months ago. Looks like it looks like it influenced someone over there in Germany. That's hilarious. Kelly's saying, are they mocking the virus? And this is the absolute ridiculousness of it. Albert Citizen said the proverbial noodle is here a little bit. See, that's what I'm saying though, man. It's like, it might be a little bit of perspective. So if I walk into a bar and they have this like awkward demand, or this thing that seems asinine on its face, like if you come in here, you got to put this ridiculous pool noodle hat on, then yeah, man, like now it seems and feels draconian in measure. It feels as if this business is saying like, even to some extent, virtue signaling or something. Like there are far better ways or far less invasive ways to enforce social distancing guidelines than putting a ridiculous noodle hat on. Okay, clearly. I mean, dude, I don't know, just chain the things, screw the chairs into the floor if you want to, or into the concrete outside so you can't move them around, and guarantee that people have to sit 6 feet apart. There's ways that are far less invasive to get that point across. If you want to actively walk around with like, a yardstick or something to make sure that people are, but the noodle thing, dude, if they force you to wear the hat, now if people voluntarily do that, and if they're making a good time of it, and if they're having fun with it, and they're like, look how fun, and it's brightly colored stuff, man, it looks absurd, it's absolutely ridiculous. But if you're having fun in the experience together, having fun in a communal experience, even though it is ridiculous, can still bring you together. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, look at us. We've been having fun here on this show for the past 40 days, even though we've been in the most ridiculous situation ever,
Right? And I know I'm trying to put a good spin. Maybe that's just, my bent on life or something. I'm trying to put a good spin on everything, even something that looks as ridiculous as what's on your screen of people having pool noodles on their head. But you do have to at least follow me with the bumper car one, right?
Hey, I want to maybe we should just make restaurants and bars no lifeguard pool rules only. Enter at your own risk.
Yeah. Right?
I mean, there's no reasonable expectation that you could sue someone who owned a body of water if you're swimming without a lifeguard, when there's a sign that says swim at your own risk, right? Because there's like a natural danger. Maybe like these restaurants and bars should take a total opposite point of view of, hey, we're not doing anything, so come in here at your own risk, and we're going to do everything normal. But let everybody know, like, you're taking a risk by coming in here,
I mean, and look at it this way, man. Like, you're exactly right. You're taking a risk by coming in here, but you're getting your name out there, right?
But it's gonna, name out there. If a business did that, they would be famous right now.
Somebody's talking about you. Bob just said this in Facebook. Bob Perry said in Facebook ago, great marketing scheme, though, right? No, he's dead on right. You put a big old noodle around my head or something like that, and people are going to be talking about it. It's in Germany, dude. It's a restaurant in Germany. It's a cafe. It's a small little cafe in Germany. And we're talking about it here in Middle and East Tennessee. For sure, it's a great
talking about Germany, so it's important.
That's a good point. And Sean hates talking about Germany. You don't even like BMWs, dude. Get
out of here with that Rhineland stuff.
Get out of here with that. Eric said, plenty of virtue signaling. Wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, man. And I'll tell you that bar that you saw where they had those bumper car style, floats around them.
I just keep putting the video up on the screen. I just keep showing people because it's so funny.
Dude. That's a bar in Maryland, man. And it seems like I don't know how long it took to make that type of thing, but dude, good idea. And honestly, bro, like decent little innovating. I don't care. I know it is ridiculous, but if that's the way they're going to force us into it, dude, like I'm telling you, man, species, they have a tendency to thrive and evolve when they're on the brink of extinction. Same thing with businesses. Okay. Like you tell them they got to go out of business. They will claw and kick and scream to figure out a way to get their people in there to hang out and have some human interaction, man. And I'm telling you, that's the lighter side of what's going on. Sean, if you want to get that next clip ready of the New Jersey police officers here, starts at 25 seconds. That's the lighter side of what we were talking about. Okay. The lighter side of businesses trying to innovate. The lighter side is put some pool noodles on your head and stay 6 feet away from each other. Have some fun with it. Brightly colored stuff, laugh and have a good time like we just did.
I got this New Jersey clip ready to go, Mr. Ernie. Do you need audio on this one?
Yeah, audio definitely on this one. And this one, you want to play it all the way through here. This clip here, I'll tell you when to start in just a second.
This one is 20. Sorry, this is the first time we're doing this live on air, folks. Are we starting at 28 seconds here and riding all the way to the end of the video?
Yeah, no. Just until the end of this police exchange is done. So I don't know, 10, 15 seconds or something. But they definitely want to hear the entire exchange. And let me set this up a little bit, okay? So what's going on here is this is a lockdown protest in New Jersey. Obviously, the individuals are protesting against the mandatory shutdown, against the mandatory lockdown. And again, not to use this term too much, but New Jersey is their laws are far more draconian than what we have to deal with here in Tennessee. So you had a bunch of protesters showing up in direct violation of the executive order, to be sure. Now, media and police that saw them do this, no, not police, sorry, media and other individuals that saw them out there protesting, they called the police. And the police showed up, and let me just let you watch the exchange unfold. And let me direct you to one important thing here, too. Watch the guy with the American face mask on. He's one of the protesters. Watch how he directs the rest of the crowd to calm down and be quiet so that the police officer can respond. I don't know why that's such an important thing to me, but contextually speaking, it really just does seem like, okay, in spite of everything else going on, in spite of them being in direct violation of an executive order, they are still trying to be law-abiding citizens. They want to be law-abiding citizens. I don't even know the point I'm trying to make with that, but go ahead and play that clip if you want, Sean.
What does that mean?
Just let speak.
Speak your piece and don't worry about it.
We are and we're only here for everybody's safety today. We plan for the worst, hope for the best, and it seems like that's what we have out here today.
Yeah.
Formally, you are all in violation of the executive order. On that note, have a good day. Everybody be safe.
See what I'm saying, man? Like, you're starting to see a coalescence, buddy. You're starting to see a little groundswell. You're starting to see some bridges built between the enforcers and the enforcees, right? You're starting to see these communities that are coming together like police officers, buddy. I promise you, at the end of the day, like, they're just other human beings. You go to church with these people. Your kids go to the same school as each other. This police officer shows up. You're in direct violation of the executive order. But with that being said, have a nice day. Continue on, right?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could get an instant replay on that. Let's just let that sink in one more time.
Formally, you are all in violation of the executive order. On that note, have a good day. Everybody be safe.
Amazing.
I know.
The app. To me, the amazing part is not that. Just could you hear the relief in those people's voices when they cheered? Yeah. Like, holy cow! This is not what we. Who expects to win against the government ever in any situation, no matter how menial? Like, even getting your driver's license, you don't have the right paperwork. Like, this is so much more intense than that. So good for them, and good for that police officer actually standing up for the law, enforcing the law, not an executive order.
And again, man, let me stress one more time, as these stories have a tendency to become, I don't think the previous story or this story had much to do with the coronavirus situation at all. Now, I know that sounds very strange on its face. I get it, because clearly on its face, it probably has everything to do with the coronavirus. But understand what I'm saying here. Over the last couple of weeks, over the last couple of months, there's been such a force down to like the basic precepts, down to the beginnings of all these things, philosophy and government and the role in our lives and all this stuff, that most of these protests have now become about the latter and not about the former. They become about the role of government and not about how coronavirus is affecting us. And that's what I think is really going on here. And that's what I think the exchange actually was. I don't think it was necessarily about a police officer showing up and saying, hey, you have the right to infect a bunch of people if you want to, and you'd have to deal with the ramifications of that. I think what it was really about was the police officer coming up and saying, like, look, y'all, I don't agree with this any more than you do. I believe that a lot of these constitutional principles that you hold to be so dear, I also do as well. And if I'm the enforcer of law, then I have to actually make a hardline stance and say what is and is not law. And maybe I don't think this executive order is one that I'm going to enforce. That's my right. Look, it's the same thing that's going on with shutting down, churches. It's the reason why I started this one of the stories with today is the lawsuit that's going on. It's the reason why we had the story that started this morning, too, about whether the Tennessee Senate and House is going to open up, the exchange, the dialogue that happens between the representatives and the representees, between the constituents and those legislators, between government and those that are governed. That's what this whole representative republic is founded upon, y'all, is this voluntary exchange of ideas and a voluntary and a willing compliance with the social contract. You get what I'm saying? And then you interject a little bit of fear and a little bit of guilt. Sorry, a lot of fear and a little bit of guilt. You interject a lot of fear about what coronavirus can do and a little bit of guilt of, even if you're not susceptible to it yourself, what you could possibly do to other people. And now the whole system just breaks open, man. And that's what I think a lot of these things really get down to, man. A lot of this stuff gets back to fundamentals. The fundamental when a New Jersey police officer is showing up, it's like, you know what, man, on that note, yeah, you're in violation. But on that note, have at it. Because what's the government going to do if I'm not enforcing it? Right? It's like, what does the law even mean if there's no enforcement mechanism? Not much. You going to say something there, Sean? Sorry, I saw you come in.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was trying to look up the article, but I'm pretty sure there's an update to that story that we're not reporting. I do believe that a summons has been issued for the owners of that gym by different police officers. Obviously they'll have to work it out in court whether or not. I think they've been charged with disorderly conduct or something like that. It's a menial nothing charge, probably because they know they're going to lose in court. Probably, I would say. But I'll make sure and verify that before I say that actually happened. I'm pretty sure it did, though.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, man, like these are the continued conversations that people are going to need to have. And I know a lot of people that possibly might watch this program or at least did in the past. Go ahead.
It does say, from Fox News. I can actually put it on the screen. The New Jersey gym owner, cited by cops after reopening, says defiance of lockdown is for all small businesses. So that's just an update to the video you just saw.
Well, and they knew that's what was going to happen. I mean, you saw when the guy with that American face mask on, part of the reason I presume why he was telling the crowd to be quiet is because he would probably expect the police officer to say, like, turn around, put your hands together, you're under arrest. Like that's the risk you take on when you do something like this, obviously, right? Eric said in Facebook, saw a post about a Walmart here in Hendersonville last night. Apparently someone's kid chokes on a drink and another customer cussed the kid out, then tells an employee to kick them out, and they kicked them out. Found that slightly interesting. He goes on to say, unfortunately, we're seeing state governments double down on lockdowns and the cops are enforcing it. It really stinks that everything is this politically driven or this much of a political divide. And I think that's exactly where it hits with me, too. I know there's a lot of people right now that are thinking, hey, that guy was totally in the wrong. And he probably was. It's not the right thing to do to go out there and risk the health and safety of a lot of other individuals just because you want your business to be open. I'm sorry. Well, I get that. I'm sure that's where a lot of people are thinking, and I totally understand that sentiment. But again, I'm telling you, man, unfortunately, both parties' hands have been forced here. And it's this perpetuating cycle. You know what I'm saying? One perpetuates the other. As government action moves, so do those individuals that just because the government is telling them to do something or not do something, they will do the opposite. And more pointedly, as government action moves, those individuals whose lives have been restricted, like the story we started with, the Nashville business owner who's now suing, saying, I can't even operate a business anymore, just out of the necessity to stay alive, they're going to do the opposite because they have to make payments. They have to pay rent. They have to pay their mortgage. They have to put food on the table as well. And as they go out and try and make more business, it perpetuates the cycle of government doing more and more. So I don't know, man, what's the solution? I don't know. Possibly the solution is to reach out to your fellow man, start localized, become a neighborhood again, become a community again, try and coach up your fellow individuals. If they need food, give them some food, man. If they need help with paying the rent or mortgage, if you're lucky enough to have a job, help them out financially a little bit, man. Maybe we could solve these problems ourselves without having the coercion of the government entity beside it. Am I wrong? Is that too idealistic? I hope not. Because the only other possible solution, the only other possible outcome is exactly what we're looking at right here. Force. It's one of two things. It's either you voluntarily do it because people are helping you and it's the right thing to do, or you're forced to do it, man. Those are the only two options I see in something like this. And the second one, I just don't want to do. And I'm telling you, man, as we get back to these fundamental questions, as we get back to what started, where it came from, what it really means for society, there's another very unfortunate story that comes up in that same vein. 1972, we got to go all the way back. 1973, sorry. Roe v. Wade, Supreme Court decision. We all remember how this came down. And again, one more time, I'm telling you why it's the theme of the show today. Convince your fellow man that you are correct on something. Do not force him to believe this because you never actually change in hearts and minds when you push it that way. I promise you. I guarantee you. Roe v. Wade is a perfect encapsulation of that entire thing. Encapsulation is even a word. It's probably not, but it is now. Here's the headline coming from Fox News. Jane Roe, otherwise known as Norma McCorvey, Jane Roe at the time, her mother was Roe in Roe v. Wade. Jane Roe was the baby that was actually the center of that situation of Roe v. Wade. What happened to Roe v. Wade is this lady got pregnant, I believe, in Texas. And at the time, you couldn't get an abortion in Texas. And Roe, in Roe v. Wade, she ended up being pregnant when this suit started. And the suit went on for a very long time. So the baby was born actually either during or shortly after or even before, I think. The point is the baby was born before the decision came down. Jane Roe was born before the opportunity came down that legalized abortion across the United States. So this thing happened, all right? So now Norman McCorvey, turns out that the plaintiff, known as Jane Roe, in a landmark 1973 Supreme Court Roe v. Wade ruling that legalized abortion, switched her support to pro-life movement. Here's the big bomb. After being paid to do so, she said now in a stunning admission before her 2017 death. Now, this has apparently just now come out because of a documentary that's been shot. But Norma McCorvey, she died at age 69 from heart failure, made the revelation in a documentary titled AKA Jane Roe, which is slated to release this Friday. And this is what her quote is, saying that this is my deathbed confession. I took their money, and they took me out in front of the cameras and told me what to say. I did it well, too. I'm a good actress, of course. I'm not acting now, she says. She reportedly received $450,000 in, quote, benevolent gifts from the pro-life movement to change her stance. This is a reporting coming directly from The Guardian initially. Now, included in this film are obviously scenes where she, with the look of disappointment, talked about the 2016 presidential election and saying, like, I wish I knew how many abortions Donald Trump was responsible for. I'm sure he's lost count, she says. That the count was too high, she says. In an effort to set the record straight finally before her death, she confirms that, in fact, she was pro-choice, going on to say that if a woman wants to have an abortion, that's no skin off my backside. However, she didn't use that word. She says, that's why they call it a choice, because there's no skin off my backside. And I pause yet one more time to say, this is the reason why I stress every single time, do not circumvent the legislature. Do not circumvent the voice of the people. Do not force the Supreme Court, a bunch of unelected old folks, to make a decision for the rest of the United States, because this is the type of stuff that we end up dealing with. The article goes on to continually question, like, why are we still dealing with this decision? Because we never actually fully made the decision as a nation. Nine people did. 9 individuals, unelected individuals did. For the rest of us. Now, on the rarest of occasions, that might be the appropriate thing to do. On the absolute rarest of occasions, when the, struggling and stubborn minority just aren't going to do something that is morally or ethically correct, or maybe it's just axiomatic that it's the right thing to do, maybe the Supreme Court should step in at that point. But this was not one of those occasions. We were right there. Same thing with homosexual marriage. The whole country was right there. We were going to figure it out anyways. Now we have a situation where the entire pro-life movement looks like it's shot in the foot because Representative Alexandria Cortez comes out. She weighs in on Twitter once this revelation comes to light now and says, wow, Norma McCorvey, a.k.a. Roe of Roe v. Wade, revealed on her deathbed that she was paid by right-wing operatives to flip her stance on reproductive rights. Quote, so like many right-wing operations, it turns out a huge part of the anti-choice movement was a scam the entire time. Really? No, look, if we really wanted to, we could address the, how logical that statement is on it if you want to. But does it matter? I could start by purely addressing and say, like, the anti-choice movement, a large part of the anti-choice movement. Okay, first of all, anti-choice. You could address something and say, like, you're telling me every pro-life person out there is only pro-life because Roe of Roe v. Wade decided to be pro-life? Absurd. But does it matter, Shine, that I'm saying it's absurd? Because frankly speaking, if any stitch of this is true, Alexandria Cortez is totally within her rights, meaning the way the media is going to coverage, meaning it. Her followers are going to follow her on this, meaning whatever she says, she has as much allowance, political capital as possible to make this claim that right-wing operatives forced an anti-choice movement because they paid an actor to do it.
Yeah, force, because people have to take money. I think I could make the same point that obviously people that are pro-choice are they're not energized by that movement so much they can be bought off very easily. I mean, I could throw that back and say people who are pro-choice aren't really pro-choice if they can be paid off, right? Right? Like, how much do they really care about being pro-choice? I thought that was like a sacrament. I thought that was like getting holy water in their world splashed on their face. You know what I'm saying? So I think you could make a point that this woman has no principles. So what do we care about her opinion? If she can be paid to have an opinion, what do we care? How do we know that what she was saying at the end, she wasn't paid by someone else to say it? You know what I'm saying? How do we know that she wasn't paid to say that Republican operatives paid me? How do we know? Once you admit that you've taken money, why do we care about your opinion? You're just a paid spokesperson. You're no different than an NBA player pushing shoes at this point. You know what I'm saying? And I understand that AOC, this is for her crowd, and it's not a very big one. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about it too much is what I'm saying. I kind of feel like it's not a waste of time or anything like that, but like this is not showing credibility for anyone. It shows a lack of credibility for this person, Jane Roe. Jane Roe's daughter, right? But that's, I'd say you could flip it all on its head and say, look at the lack of principled people on the pro-choice side. She was pro-choice this whole time, and she took money just to say she wasn't. So how much did she really care about that opinion? How much weight should we put into her reaction here at the end of her life?
I know, man. And I even go to a statement back to what she said before, Norman McCorvey. By the way, I kind of glossed over this part, but the Jane Roe v. Wade, that stuff. Roe is just a name that they put in place because they didn't want to out the actual individual's last name. At the time of the case was going on, Roe was just like a
Doe, right? Like John.
Yeah,
Doe,
exactly, like Doe. Yeah. Norma McCorvey is her real name, and when she made that statement in the documentary that if a young woman wants to have an abortion, that's no skin off my backside. That's why they call it a choice, she says, and it's just an interesting state of irony that's coming out right there. It's like, yeah, dude, of course it's no skin off your backside because you have a backside to be taken skin off of. Right? Like you exist is the point that I'm making. Like the irony behind the statement of it's like, dude, well, you better be glad that your mother didn't feel the same way, or at least didn't have the opportunity to feel the same way, because that statement would never have happened otherwise. Like your entire lack of existence proves the point that you, of course, there's no skin off your backside. Because the backside developed because your mother didn't make the choice that she initially wanted to make. I mean, like, goodness gracious, bro. I don't know. Now we're getting into the real fundamental question of, is existence actually better than non-existence? And I'm not pretending to bring that up right now. Let's just presume for the sake of the conversation that existence is probably better than non-existence. I don't know,
Here,
dude.
we can take a quick poll. Smash like in the chat room if you prefer existence.
Right. I just don't know how to follow, man. Yeah, it's no abortion's no skin off her backside. It's just, dude,
gross,
of course it's no skin off your backside.
What a nasty human being, and what a person with no principles or morals. Because it's like, it's one thing if I disagree with you on something. It's another thing if I know that you have taken a position in a bad faith way. That's totally different. And like automatically I have zero respect for this person, and really zero respect for the article, because it's not news that a person got paid to say something, except to say that that's a negative thing. That's a negative thing. And why do we care about her? Like, she's being honest now? That's so weird.
Right.
I mean, to assume that she's being honest now. We know she got paid. She could have gotten paid to say all this. Gotten paid by one of AOC's little shadow companies. And that's why maybe AOC was so ready and right on it to make a comment about it. But what would you call it? I don't believe any of this stuff. I'm disenchanted with this story and its reliability. You know,
man, I think that hits to the heart of the matter for me right now. We've talked a lot about this. David and I have talked a lot about this. That especially since my very, very short time spent up at the legislature, man, I'm telling you, dude, like I really do believe that trust is the new tradable commodity of the future. And I mean that in a very literal sense, right? Like I do mean that, you know, you can never like actually quantify or quantitize, new term again. You can't print money based upon trust, but in a very real sense, I think you kind of can. I don't know if I can exchange $2 worth of trust for some service or something later on. But the point I'm making is, man, like you only really get one shot at it. And it's something right now that I think is beloved more than it ever has been in human history before. Is just like, what do you know to be true? Empiricism. How do you know what you know? And how do you know who you can trust when you say something like this, man? And on both sides, on both accounts here, let's be honest and let's be totally real with the real news audience. one reason again, I really appreciate Zig yesterday saying like, real friends. He explained this to us after the show yesterday. The reason why he was saying real friends, he was obviously making a play on the term of real news at making real friends in real news. But the real friends he was talking about, he was really stressing that point of the term real with us yesterday. Like, what is real? What are real friends? Meaning like, dude, can you really trust? Can you be vulnerable with someone? Can you expect reciprocation on the other side? And to be fair to this story here, man, if any stitch of what Norma McCorvey is saying is true, that she was paid close to $500,000 to fabricate some pro-life stance, that is beyond, it's reprehensible. Now, I don't know if I don't know if the exchange actually came up of like, hey, we know you're pro-choice, but if we pay you $500,000, would you become pro-life? We weren't really that principled to begin with, exactly what Shai was saying. But even if that wasn't the exact exchange, maybe it was just a thing of like, hey, your mother could have aborted you. Now you're living instead. Wouldn't it be a cool thing if we put you on camera and you said something about that? And then it gradually turned into this thing of like pro-life movements paying her. And she saw this, and she just over 50 years of doing that. And all of a sudden she incorporated this pro-life stance in because she was paid to be on camera. I don't know how it happened. Nevertheless, if anybody was disingenuous or dishonest during the entire time, you've destroyed the cause behind it now. Nobody in the pro-life movement can ever use this lady's name ever again, period. And anybody that ever put effort into using this lady's name has been completely destroyed in the movement. Guaranteed, right?
But I've never heard of this lady.
I haven't either.
See, this is what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know how big of an impact she's had on the debate because I've never heard of her. This is the first time I've ever heard of her. That $450,000 was not spent very well, because right. How good of a spokesperson? I've never seen her on camera. I've never heard anyone reference her. This has all the makings of like to me, this is just people on the left making a story out of something that's not a story. And then for some reason, Fox parodying it. And I'm not trying to I'm not dumping on you for picking it to be on the show, but I am digging at Fox a little bit on the editor side. Like, how do we know she's being genuine right now? How do we know that? I mean, that's an assumption in the story, and there's no proof there. There's no proof. She has every incentive to, for all we know, she took it willingly, the money. And she was pro-life maybe all those years ago. And maybe because of the current culture, she even mentioned Donald Trump. Maybe she changed her mind a couple years ago for all we know, but we don't know. And it's not covered in the story. Because for me, if there's way more evidence that she spent years and years and years as a pro-life person, and this is me not taking really a side, I'm just talking about it. But there's more evidence that she is pro-life and someone paid her to do this now because she did it for years and years and years. And maybe the money just dried up. Maybe she's changed her tune because she said, I'm sick, I'm dying, give me more money. And they said, no, because no one knows your name. You haven't been a very good spokesperson, So, yeah.
And by the way, too, just so we can end the show on a slightly lighter note, man, Sean, if you want to pull up that next clip there, right underneath this story of Trump responding about the Pompeo charges, it'd just be a fun way to end because it's just so absurd. But as Sean's pulling that clip up,
we got to cover that Bob Barr not choosing to prosecute President Obama, too. I think that's pretty big news.
Yeah, that one was slightly evergreen, man. But shoot, man, we don't have much going on today. If you want to hit that, we can definitely let's you know what, man, let's go ahead and pull that up too. Right, as you're pulling that one up, the Bob Barr, that clip, that entire clip, I'm pretty sure is about 5 minutes long. If we want to work through all of it, or if you just want to start around minute 4 minutes and 8 seconds there, that's where he goes on to say, actually, dude, do two things here, okay? If you're pulling up that Barr clip, start at minute 2:08. 2:08. That's the best place to start, and then we'll eventually get into minute 4 there. Let me read some of these Facebook comments as Sean's pulling that up here. Eric saying, we could also point out how she was a scam, but that's here nor there at the moment. But isn't this just an echo chamber statement? She isn't making anyone feel any different than they already do about whatever side they're on. Dude, that's 100% true, right? Daniel Snowden says nihilism rules. Okay. But no, what Eric said is 100% true, like dead on. That's exactly right. Regardless of what Alexandra Cortez says out of this now, or regardless of what, Norma McCorvey said at the end of her life, nobody's feeling any different than they did previously. You're not going to be. It's honestly, bro. It's like that Louis C.K. stand-up where he kind of walks into his audience and he's like, "What do you expect these pro-life people to do when they're out there, protesting outside of abortion clinics? They think you're killing an actual human being. They think premeditated homicide is taking place. What do you expect them just be kind of casual about it? Like, I wish you wouldn't. I really wish you wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, I clearly do not endorse protesting outside of an abortion clinic. I do not think it's an effective tactic. I think statistics will show that to be true as well. But the point still stands of what Louis C.K. is saying. If you think it's premeditated homicide of a human being, then how do you expect these people to respond? And Eric's totally dead incorrect. If that's what you think is taking place, it doesn't matter what Norman McCorvey said or didn't say. It's just a nice little tool to have in the tool belt, sure, but it's not going to change your mind. With that being said, let's go on to some of this Barr conversation here because it may start making some moves here. Yeah, start that right around a minute 2 there, Sean. That's important here with Attorney Barr. By the way, real quick here, he's obviously talking about what's been going on, the unmasking scandal. He's obviously talking about Russiagate that's moved now into Obamagate. He's obviously addressing the fact that it's becoming more and more clear as the days go on that it looks like the Obama administration weaponized our intelligence communities to spy on the President Trump's campaign and then actual President Trump administration, 2016 on into 2017. Very important stuff. But go ahead and play that clip there.
Any effort to pursue an investigation of either candidate has to be approved by me. Now, what happened to the president, and I've said this many times, what happened to the president in the 2016 election and throughout the first 2 years of his administration was abhorrent. It was a grave injustice, and it was unprecedented in American history. The law enforcement and intelligence apparatus of this country were involved in advancing a false and utterly baseless Russian collusion narrative against the president. The proper investigative and prosecutive standards of the Department of Justice were abused, in my view, in order to reach a particular result. We saw 2 different standards of justice emerge, one that applied to President Trump and his associates, and the other that applied to everybody else. We can't allow this ever to happen again. The Durham investigation is trying to get to the bottom of what happened, and it will determine whether there were any federal laws broken, and if there were, those who broke the laws will be held to account. But this cannot be, and it will not be, a tit-for-tat exercise. We are not going to lower the standards just to achieve a result. The only way to stop this vicious cycle, the only way to break away from a dual system of justice is to make sure that we scrupulously apply the single and proper standard of justice for everybody. Now, under the long-standing standards of the
I tell you, man, I cannot express how conflicted and how much cognitive dissonance I have going on with that statement right there. And I'm going to say it right now. How I feel about that, I loved everything that he said. In spite of how much conflict I'm having right now, in spite of how much I want to see everybody on the other side finally get their comeuppance, in spite of how much I know that how many we had, what's the Democrat talking point during Russiagate? It can't be that nothing happened because we have 36 indictments. So I want to see 50 plus indictments coming from the other side of this as well. I promise you I do. But with what William Barr just said there, I'm telling you, man, I don't care if we ever have a single indictment as long as we are doing what's right. And I know, I get it. I understand. But I do not want to play the same foul games as the other side just to say that we got to win as well. That's not who we are. That's not how principled we are. That's not what I want to stand on. That does not set a precedent that I want to abide by, because today we might be in power and tomorrow it's going to be someone totally different. Aside from it just being the right thing to do. He says this cannot become a tit for tat. Absolutely it cannot. He says the only way to break away from different standards that apply to different laws for different people is to apply a correct standard properly across the board. Absolutely. He says there's 2 different standards of judgment. Clearly. And as unfortunate as that might be, man, I think that the only thing we may be left, and this is why I said, dude, a week ago when we first brought this story up, remember when we were talking about something different that day? And everyone, it was the first day that hashtag Obama came out. It was like last Tuesday. And I sat on it and I sat on it, didn't say anything about it. And then finally at the end of the show, someone said, hashtag Obamagate, talk about it. And I didn't want to talk about it because I knew this exact thing is what was going to happen. I promise you. I said yesterday, I think one of the best things in political punditry is your ability to be able to predict what's happening. And I said last week, this was going to be the outcome. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to get anything from the Durham stuff. It's not. But likely what will come out of the Durham stuff is a massive expose put on full display for the entire nation to see how wrong everything was. And then what's going to happen is we're going to get, some type of explanation that it wasn't exactly illegal. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Sean, go ahead and play clip. Start at minute 4 there. Just start at minute 4. And when I say it wasn't exactly illegal, this is the explanation we're going to get. Go ahead and play it there.
Evidence to prove each element of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the standard we're applying. Now, I have a general idea of how Mr. Durham's investigation is going. And as I have indicated, some aspects of the matter are being examined as potential crimes. But we have to bear in mind what the Supreme Court recently reminded us of in the Bridgegate case. As the court said there's a difference between an abuse of power and a federal crime. Not every abuse of power, no matter how outrageous, is necessarily a federal crime. Now, as to President Obama and Vice President Biden, whatever their level of involvement, based on the information I have today, I don't expect Mr. Durham's work will lead to a criminal investigation of either man. Our concern over potential criminality is focused on others.
And you hear what I'm saying, right?
This is a tomato.
No, but he's already chumming that water. And I'm not saying he's poisoning the well, but he's already sort of doing a slight predictive programming of this is what Barr is really saying, okay? Eric said in Facebook a second ago, he said, I don't want to see justice just because it would be a win either. But do you really think it stops here? If Trump gets reelected, you'll see 4 more years of some kind of attack. Maybe Barr can stop some of them, but he doesn't have the power to stop all of them. And this is what Barr is really saying. If you want to know, I think the legal breakdown of what he's saying is like, Barr is saying, I would like to get these guys as much as y'all do. I would, but I can't. Because unfortunately, whether you love it or hate it, whether it works out now or it doesn't, the simple fact of the matter is that there's immunity for a lot of what these folks did. You don't like it? Change the law. Change the law is what William Barr is going to say, okay? And he's already doing predictive programming on this right now. And I knew that's exactly what was going to happen. As far as it pertains to Obama, Biden, high-level last names that you know, even like a Susan Rice or a Loretta Lynch or a Hillary Clinton, God forbid, none of these folks are probably going to see anything. Because what are you going to tag them on is my question, that they don't have already some type of immunity or allowance to have done. Like, we all know that it's virtually impossible to say that there is anything that is not within the scope of a president's employment. I'll put it this way. Virtually everything is within the scope of employment for a president. I mean, virtually everything. I mean, goodness gracious, dude. Barack Obama, President Obama, straight up murdered an American citizen. I mean, that happened. We all realize that, right? Like, straight up through a drone strike, murdered an American citizen without habeas corpus, without due process, without a due process even coming into it, without his day in court, without a charge, just straight up killed him. Nothing happened there because it was within the scope of employment of pursuing a terrorist. Yeah. The list goes on, man. And I'm telling you, I don't appreciate this any more than anybody else. I do appreciate what William Barr is saying, though. I do appreciate what William Barr from day one has always been a guy who's been beholden to the office itself. He's been beholden to the Constitution. Again, we were talking about this with our buddy Zig yesterday after we got off air, and one of the best things that Antonin Scalia, Justice Scalia, ever gave speeches on was drawing this distinction between the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. right? And Anthony Scalia would say that, like, the Bill of Rights is not a great thing about America. It's a thing about America. But there are other countries out there that have far better Bill of Rights than we do, far better protections. I mean, like, I'm talking specificity within their First Amendment protections that go well beyond what we could ever think about in America. But Scalia always drew the distinction, says, but it's not our Bill of Rights that protect us. It's the Constitution. It's the framework behind that. It's the structure that protects. A lot of the founding fathers didn't want a Bill of Rights anyways. They thought to themselves, like, why? Well, hold on. Why would we need to define these inherent rights from God? We all know what they are. We're talking natural law stuff here, baby. Come on. That's how the founding fathers spoke. They said, baby. But we're talking natural law stuff, man. You don't need to define that stuff, because if you do define the stuff, the fear became, as you start to define it, the things that are not on that list, now the thing seems like they're not inherent rights, which they clearly would be. And Scalia drew the distinction, saying, like, it's not the Bill of Rights that give us that stuff, bro. It's the constitutional framework that protects, the system of checks and balances that protects. And what William Barr is pointing to is here, that system of checks and balances may have become perverted. We may have lost it. We may have lost the plot and lost sight of what the original formation and principles meant and what it should have been, and the fabrics and all that other nonsense. And I think what William Barr is really saying is, like, dude, we got two different standards of judgment right now. It's going to be that way until we change it. I'll give you all the evidence, but I can't guarantee to bring people in. But I think that's an enlightening point. It's an enlightening moment. It's a charging, encouraging moment for the American people and for Republicans in particular, man. Think about it this way. If they start to reveal some of this evidence now, and they say, we're not going to be able to get him, I'm sorry, but if you reelect me again as your president, I'll make sure to change some of this stuff so that it never happens again. And as your president, I'll make sure that we always hold these people accountable. Change that, man. Make sure you change the standard. My name's Mr. Henry, by the way. Signing off a little bit late today, but hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow. Doing it big as always. We got a holiday weekend coming up here, I think, as well, coming through on Friday. Shannon and I will probably still be doing a show for you, though. I'll let you know. Show notes and the links up there ahead. And then also one more thing. Just honestly, if y'all haven't signed that rejectbailouts.com thing, can I just straight up ask, is like a favor from the Real News audience, just sign that thing, man. Trust me and Shine. Trust us both. Trust Shine and I, rather, when we say, like, you don't want the federal government bailing out the states that have been run so poorly. You don't want Tennesseans, let me put it this way. You don't want Tennesseans, taxpayer dollars, helping to bail out terrible mismanaged funds or pension plans of states that couldn't figure out how to do it like Tennessee could figure out how to do it. Sign that pledge at the top, rejectbailouts.com. Do us a favor. Shine, anything you want to say on the way out there, buddy?
Just that I appreciate William Barr. Revenge is never good. Revenge always gets returned upon you 7 times and then multiplies 7 times every time someone takes revenge. That's from the Bible and other ancient traditions, and I believe it to be true, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in what William Barr is doing. Proud to be an American.
Hey, love all y'all Real News audience. I mean that sincerely. Hit us up in direct message if you ever need anything at all. We'll see you tomorrow. Doing it big.